welcome to Clearing the Haze podcast. I'm your host, Chuck Marting, and today we have another guest with us that is going to be talking about the nominations for the NDASA Board of Directors. And today, my guest is Glenn Dobson. And Glenn, you might notice, has just a little bit different way of articulating things in how he speaks. So I've been looking forward for quite a while doing this interview with you, Glenn. So how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, man. I appreciate your time. This is going to be fun.
It's awesome. Well, Glenn, there's been a lot of different answers that people have given for why they are doing what they're doing and why they're looking to be elected to the NDASA Board of Directors. And so I guess my first question to you is, can you provide just an overview of your experience, your background in the drug and alcohol screening industry, as well as any relevant industry affiliations or certificates you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And look, as you said in your introduction, you'll notice a slight unusual accent. I'm based in New Zealand, so I'm in the Asia Pacific area, and I'm part of the international committee on the NDASA board at the moment. So I'll try and speak clearly. I know our accents are difficult to understand sometimes.
Oh, that's awesome.
In relation to a bit of my history, just very briefly, I guess I started my career and been introduced to drugs and the negative effects of drugs when I was in my early 20s, and I joined the police in New Zealand, and I was in the New Zealand police for 15 years. And in that 15 years, I was on the street the entire time, and so I was exposed to a lot of the negative effects of drugs and so forth, as all law enforcement around and the world would see. From there, I went on to take on a national operations manager's role within a government department, the coroner's office in New Zealand. And again, the coroner's office deals with a lot of the negative effects of drugs and deals with the, I guess, at the bottom of the cliff in relation to how drugs affect people's lives and so forth. And from there, I went on and I became a part of the drug detection agency based here in New Zealand. So we're a workplace drug testing company. We are in both New Zealand and Australia, and we have a presence across the Asia Pacific area. And I've been with the Drug Detection Agency for just over 12 years now. I'm currently the CEO of the Drug Detection Agency. Some of the NDASA members may know the previous CEO, Kirk Hardy. I know he left an impression when he turned up in conferences and so forth, and he's well regarded in the industry. And I've learned a lot from Kirk. Look, as part of that industry, I guess some of my background and my qualifications in the early days came through NDASA and associations and membership with NDASA, then obviously through NDASA and being on the board of NDASA as well. And one of the larger US-based associations that we take an active part in as well as the California Narcotic Officers Association. So it's a large training-based association. It gives us a lot of training and background around the drug trends and what's happening in the drug industry globally, which has been a great part for us on the other side of the world. And as part of that, I'm also a trained DER and also, unusually, a qualified meth cook. So it's always handy to know what happens on the other side of the coin to understand how to combat it. So I guess that's a little bit of my background and qualifies myself a little bit.
Yeah, we both have a pretty similar background with law enforcement and DRE and all that other stuff, and you get to see the impact of drugs and how it affects us. And I know for me, that's how I ended up getting into this industry. And with what you're saying right now, it was with you as well. So I mean, there's a lot of good things that come from some of the experiences that we have and what we bring to the table. So I think that what you bring is a pretty awesome skill set and something that is going to help a lot of people understand. Not only are we facing these things here, but all over the world. We have drugs are something that are, just not, I'm going to go over here or over here. It's everywhere. It's non-discriminate. So, Glenn, what motivated you to pursue a position on the board of directors for NDASA? What do you hope to achieve once you're elected to the board?
Yeah, so I guess if I talk a little bit about my background as I did before, coming through originally membership through NDASA and then NDASA and then coming on to the board there. And also as I've grown through my professional career, I've gotten more involved in the industry itself. We know it's a dynamic industry. We know that there's a lot of things going on in the industry, and you're quite right when you say that it doesn't happen in isolation. It's really connected, and one of the things that I've learned and speaking with the members of NDASA and being part of the board to date is that we live in a really big world, but it's actually really quite small. And it's amazing how small and connected we are, and how we can think from a global perspective. But when we act locally in the US, whether it's within your different states in the US or from an international perspective within our own environment in our own countries, we actually have a hugely powerful voice and a hugely powerful advocate role for NDASA. And so that's one of the things that I'm really keen to drive from an NDASA perspective. Obviously, I've got a passion from the international perspective. You know, it's true to where I come from and where I am. So I'm definitely keen to continue to drive that international lens for NDASA, drive the membership, drive the international accreditation. I think that adds a real degree of credibility to NDASA. NDASA will always be a US-based drug testing association, and that's correct, and that's how I think it should be. That's where it originated from, and that's where the large amount of the membership's from. But I'd like to continue to drive that international membership and give it a truly global presence. I think there's no time like the present for NDASA to really have that global voice, that global presence. And what I see, and the benefit of somebody like me from the Asia Pacific area, is I learn so much what's happening from the US. I learn so much what's happening from the areas around the US, and those trends, we follow them. The rest of the world follows them. And so it allows me then to stay ahead of the game, allows me then to also use the NDASA voice and the learnings from NDASA to drive that messaging, that learning, that training on a global perspective. And that's what I'm really keen to drive towards.
Well, and I think it's really important, Glenn, that people understand this isn't just something that you've just recently, or even your company just recently got involved with NDASA. You guys have been part of this from the beginning.
Yeah.
Some of the founding members. So, I mean, you guys have been pretty instrumental in what it is that we've been doing, and having a global voice, I think, has been really important for people to understand, because I think it brings more credibility to our organization. I think it gives us, it opens the window for us to be able to do that. I mean, for you to be able to come on for like town hall or something like that, even though I know it gets really early for you guys to be able to do that. You've been on there a few times, but to hear what you guys are facing or things that you're dealing with, it rings true with us here as well and everybody else. And I feel that it's important for people to understand that it's critical for us to have people in the roles that you're in currently and you're wanting to do for NDASA and to continue to do.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And look, it's one of the big learnings, I guess, from my perspective. And the more I get involved, the more it just reinforces it. You know, if I go back to the history and right back to the start, you know, Joe Maguire was a massive part of how myself personally and our company was introduced through NDASA and the formation and so forth of NDASA. And I mentioned Kirk before. Kirk, myself, and Joe have a great relationship personally and professionally. We've hosted Joe over in Australia in one of our conferences, so she could present on exactly what's happening with the marijuana lobby and what's happening with the legalization in the US based, and what we can predict is going to happen for us in the future. As a result of her coming and speaking, that was several years ago. We've seen exactly what she predicted. The playbook is absolutely step by step what she said would happen, and it allows us to then have that voice and to use experts like Joe and her expertise and her qualifications in this part of the world as well to grow that NDASA voice.
Yeah, and it's crucial. And I'm so grateful to have people like yourself that see the value in that and then want to continue to be on the board, to be able to continue to grow and to continue to have an impact. So I want to thank you for that. I know it's not easy being as far away as you guys are, but it's so valued. And your commitment and what you've done so far for NDASA has just been incredible. You know, Glenn, NDASA values collaboration, inclusivity. It's what we're talking about right now. But how do you plan to collaborate with other board members, stakeholders, or even broader membership to foster that cohesiveness and the effectiveness in that governance structure that we've been establishing.
Yeah, well, I guess the fact that I'm on the other side of the world, collaboration is the only way I can do it. You know, COVID was a major influencer in how we collaborate now, and virtually like this, like Zooms and emails and virtual meetings and so on. And collaboration is such an important part when we're on the other side of the world and also in a different time zone, as you've mentioned. As part of that international committee, I guess we'll continue to drive that collaboration and bring that voice, that international global voice, to the NDASA board and the NDASA membership. And that's through just engaging with the board members we already know, the people we already have the relationship with, but also sitting down. I think so often collaboration will talk about what they're doing and what they intend to do. I think a big part of collaboration is actually just sitting back and listening. It's actually just sitting back and understanding what's the perspective that the other side's coming from, or the several sides are coming from. What are the issues that we can all agree on? How do we all work together to those issues? How do we better understand ourselves? The ways that we can approach those issues and collaborate together and actually just sit back and listen. And through that active listening, I think that creates a collaborative environment already to a certain extent. You need to understand, I would never, I guess, be arrogant enough to even begin to understand some of the challenges that the US is facing around the drug trends and the workplace drug testing. But through the collaboration, through the history of NDASA and having the knowledge and learning from the board members there, it's been a great learning curve for me to understand some of the challenges and to see there's a huge amount of parallels. There's an absolute huge amount of parallels. There are some absolute differences from a global perspective, but there's a huge amount of parallels as well. And that's through collaborating and understanding, listening and working together on some common goals and agreeing what those common goals are, understanding what the direction of the association is, understanding what the strategic direction and what the association is trying to achieve, and then working together and all rowing in the same direction towards that.
Has it been effective for you in your business, utilizing some of the training materials and the things that you've learned here within NDASA to be able to incorporate them there in New Zealand? Or has that been met with any, I guess, saying, well, that's going somewhere else. That's what they're dealing with. That's not what we're dealing with. Have you been effective in being able to explain to them, like you just a little bit ago just said, hey, look, this is coming and we've already seen it. Have they been open to hearing what you have to say and what you're trying to do there?
Oh, absolutely. You know, there's a couple of examples there in relation to that. I'm based in New Zealand. We're Asia Pacific. Asia Pacific is a small part of the globe. So certainly from a drug testing and alcohol testing perspective, we'll often look to Europe and the US for what the trends are around there. I speak often at industry groups, and one of the first things I'll do is I'll qualify my position and I'll qualify where I'm coming from. And being a part of NDASA and pushing that NDASA voice is such an important part of the introduction and the qualification in relation to that, and so that on this side of the world they can understand what NDASA is about, what it's achieving, and that it truly does have a strong, consistent global voice. Now, several years ago, we went through a process here of a referendum on whether marijuana should be legalized or not. And I went back to the NDASA board and got the sign-off to speak on behalf of NDASA in relation to speaking out against legalization of that for New Zealand. So again, it's using that voice in not only a workplace setting, but also a political setting as well, which is incredibly important. I worked with Joe several years ago around updating some of the collector's course training around conflict management and so forth to Asia Pacificize it, for want of a better term, to make it relevant for our market. So we continuously use that training in our own company as part of an income stream through for NDASA as well, and because it's relevant for us and it gives it that global voice again.
I think it's pretty important for everyone to understand that it's just not collectors and NDASA that have brought such instrumental things to the board and to the organization, but we have the perspective of the MROs and the labs and everybody else to help us in collaborating with what we're doing, and even to be able, like you said, to have those resources. So it's not just one or two people in NDASA that are able to help you with the things that you're dealing with over there, but a multitude of other people and resources that we're able to provide and that you're able to tap into. And the same thing for us. I know that if I hear about something that's going on over there, I can contact you and you're going to tell me what the heck's going on. To be able to have you speak like what you're saying, I think it's very important for people to hear you and to hear what you're dealing with, what your employers are facing, because I think that when people see that, there's not much difference. You have the same concerns, you have the same challenges, and just getting that perspective and knowing that we can all help each other to be able to accomplish the same thing, and that is to be safe in the workplace, have our families safe, be able to travel, and not have to worry about individuals being impaired and not affecting our lives in such a catastrophic way if we don't address this. So
Yeah, true.
I
It's
think
so
it's
true.
really important. Um, you know, Given the rapidly evolving landscape of the drug and alcohol screening technologies and regulations and things that we're facing, how do you intend to stay informed and ensure that NDASA remains at the forefront of the industry innovations and also the compliance that we're dealing with right now?
Yeah, so I mean, I completely agree with you. It's the nature of the beast with the Drug and Alcohol Testing Association. It's a massively evolving beast, and that partly makes it really exciting, but also partly makes it really challenging as well.
Yeah.
And it's trying to get that balance between the two. Like I talked before about collaboration, and I think that's a huge part in relation to staying ahead of the curve and being ahead of the evolution of the trends and so on. To me, there's a couple of parts of that. Number one, there's the technology side of it itself. The more we go down the technology route from an industry, it opens up so many doors around how we screen, how we test, how we can work with our clients and the employers and the workforce at a global sense to make sure, as you say, they're safe. They get home at the end of the day. They get home to their families. Their workers aren't affected by drugs and so on. So there's that continual collaboration, that continual communication, that continual building relationships, which I think is so important in relation to that. The other side of obviously is the drug trends as well, and that's the other, I guess, evolution and continual development is that we're seeing certainly at the moment a massive shift towards more synthetic drugs at the moment as opposed to the natural drugs, and there's some reasons behind that from a production perspective and easier to get into a small island like New Zealand at the bottom of the world and all those types of things. And so we need to stay ahead of the trend for that as well. So again, it's engaging at a local level for the picture there, but also engaging at a global level within the board members, the membership itself. And that's where, just as you talked before, you reach out as and when needed. Same for me from that perspective in relation to either assisting with knowledge around trends and what's happening or seeking some guidance around what may happen. I think I'm a big advocate or a big believer that history is a predictor of the future, and it's always good to know a context around history, what's happened in the past, what circumstances were there to understand what may be happening in the future. And I think having that context, having that knowledge is really important for a legacy perspective for the NDASA board and the NDASA membership as well. As NDASA grows, as it gets stronger, as it gets bigger, the more it understands the history of the association, the industry, and where it's been and where it's going. I think that can do nothing but give it more and more strength.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you totally. Ethical considerations play such a significant role in the drug and alcohol screening industry. How do you prioritize ethical decision making and at the same time ensure transparency and integrity, especially in your role as a board of director for NDASA?
Yeah, I mean, ethics is such a huge thing, and I know that we're exposed as an association to a lot of political factions, both from the US base and also globally. And I know ethics is a huge question mark when it comes to politics and so forth as well. Um, I'm a 55-year-old male, so I was brought up in a fairly old school sort of environment, and I was brought up that your word is king, that you say what you're going to do and you do what you're going to say, and that really has shaped me personally and professionally throughout my career, throughout my life, and will continue to do so. Ethical decision making was a huge part way back in my younger days when I was in law enforcement, and I've carried that through into my professional career today, and will continue to. I was years ago. I was part of and delivered ethical decision making training in the police, and we used a framework called the SELF framework, SELF.
Hmm.
And that was just applied to S stood for scrutiny. Do your decisions, do your actions withstand scrutiny? Imagine your mother, your father, your peers are standing next to you. Would you make the same decision? Would you have the same actions? So
Yeah.
does it withstand scrutiny? E was, does it ensure compliance? Are there certain policies that you need to comply with? So does the decision ensure compliance with those policies? L in self was fairly straightforward. Is it lawful? Is it a lawful decision? Is it a lawful behavior? Is it a lawful action? The last one was the really interesting one, the F for self. That's fear. Is it a fair decision? Often you'll make a decision, make an ethical decision, and you're caught between a rock and a hard place. You've got two real conflicting situations. But would you be comfortable and explain your situation? Say, here's the scenario, and here's the reason why I've made the decision. And I appreciate that may be a difficult decision, but it's fair based on these circumstances. So I actually use that framework a lot in my professional life around applying decision making, and it's a fairly straightforward, basic framework to apply, and it works really well.
Well, it's amazing how things from your experience and what you bring to the table are able to be transferred over and implemented into what you're doing right now.
Yeah,
It's been amazing for me to be able to see that not only with what you're saying and what you're explaining, but with other people coming from other diverse backgrounds and the things that they've experienced. And I think that's what brings each one of us as a very unique person to be on that board is because of that background, because of that insight that we have and what we've experienced. I mean, the things that you're experiencing in your life are very similar to what I would describe, but I think that your perspective from where you're at is going to be a little bit different than what we're seeing here. It could be totally different. I don't know. I mean, I think that's what's awesome is to be able to sit down and talk to you and to hear what's going on and then try and figure out, okay, so how would I have Glenn help me or how can I help Glenn? And then figure it out because
that's
we're trying to get the same thing.
absolutely, and that's that collaboration part, which is so important, and that's the strength of the association. You know, it brings a mass of individuals together for a common voice, a common goal, all working towards the same thing, and it gives them such a stronger, more balanced and consistent voice in relation to that.
You know, Glenn, this has been an awesome experience to be able to interview, to be able to give people a glimpse into who you are and what it is that you're wanting to accomplish on the board of directors and the importance of it for you. And so I've only got a couple more things that I want to ask you.
Oh,
But the next question I want to ask you is, can you share with us an example of a situation where you faced a complex challenge or even a disagreement within a professional or organizational setting? And when you found yourself in that situation, how were you able to navigate it to achieve a positive outcome?
yeah, so I can think of an example, and it was a couple of years ago. It was through the drug detection agency through our company, where we had to deal with an external agency around an accreditation process, and we were dealing with a piece of regulation that was actually fairly complex, and the accreditation agency had a different view to us in relation to how that regulation applied and how it would apply to us and the process of us getting an accreditation. The accreditation process was an important part of the industry for us as a business. And so we wanted to achieve it, but we were really at loggerheads with this external accrediting agency around how that we work together to achieve it. And so there was a bit of back and forth, as there always in these things to start with. And in the end, I just said, look, what we need to do is let's sit down, let's have a meeting, let's sit down face to face and work through this and understand, because we're at one stage we're almost at opposing ends of the spectrum in relation to how you, apply this regulations and how it fit with the industry. We sat down, number one, just sitting down and just talking really starts to build that relationship. It starts to break down those walls and those barriers to a certain extent. And we started to work on what are the commonalities here? What are we trying to achieve? What does the regulation say? What are we looking at in the larger context as opposed to it in isolation? And what are your drivers from the external agency and what are ours from a company? And we started to get some real agreement, some real parallels, we're on the same page on a lot of this stuff. We actually agreed we want the same outcome. We've got all these commonalities. Let's work on now the areas that we can get some commonality and some steps together to finally achieve that outcome. Look, the result of that, from our perspective and from the external agency as well, as I said before, number one, it built a much stronger understanding relationship between us. It built trust, which is a huge thing. And so it built that trust from us understanding their drivers, what their concerns were, what they're trying to achieve, and actually made us realize, 95% of that is common with us as well. We just come at it from a different angle. So once we broke down those barriers, once we understood their perspective, once they understood ours, we worked through a plan. We applied a plan to get to the end process where the accreditation was gained. To a certain extent, it was turning a negative into a positive. It was sitting down, and I guess it's the same as when I talked about the collaboration before. It was understanding the other point of view. It was understanding where they're coming from. It was allowing them to build some trust in where we were coming from, and to build that relationship to come to the outcome that was right for both parties.
Glenn, I need to take a moment and just acknowledge you for just a minute. You and I've had a couple conversations. We've talked. I've listened to you on different occasions when you've been able to be not only in our board meetings, but also being on, I think you've even been on the town hall a couple times, if I'm not mistaken. And I got to tell you, the one thing that has resonated with me when I think of who you are is your passion and your drive. And also knowing that if I come to you and I ask you a question, you're going to give me the truth about it. You're going to tell me the perspective of it. And if you think that it's wrong, or if it needs to be handled a different way, you're going to do that. And having that type of integrity and that type of drive in this industry is so much needed. And to have somebody of your character wanting to do this, I think it's more difficult for somebody as yourself serving on this board, being as far away as you are, and not having the ready resources of somebody right next door coming over to help you or to be there for you. And you've never complained. You've always handled this with grace and style. And I think that knowing that we have an individual like yourself that has that passion to see this thing not only grow, but also to be able to affect other people's lives, to be able to help them with what they're dealing with, is so important. And to be able to have somebody like that, like you, that you're willing to do that. I mean, we've got a big time difference right now with it. And, we figured it out because this was important to you to be able to do this. And I think that's what people need to understand. You're in a different position than most of the nominees that we've seen on Clearing the Haze that we've interviewed, just because you're the um, only applicant or nominee that is going for this position in this board, being in a different country. And I think that says a lot, that even though there may be some difficulties there, that you're still driving forward. And if people didn't know before and they just saw you in a board meeting or even at a meeting, they probably wouldn't even think that anything about it, that there's such a time difference or a different direction that we're going, because you fit right in with everybody and they can resonate with you because of the things that you're facing and you're dealing with. So I want to thank you for your willingness to be vulnerable and for doing that, and for your desire to see NDASA grow and to be part of that. So I just want to thank you for that.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I really do. Look, it's a two-way thing. It's a two-way thing. There's great people in the association. There's a huge amount of influence there. everyone's willing to offer their opinion. Everyone's willing to help. And you're right. Time zones make it difficult at times, but everyone steps up, everyone plays their part, and there's nothing like the magic of a bit of coffee every so often when it's an early morning start for me to make me look semi-alive. But, as I keep saying, it is truly a two-way thing. And as much as I enjoy participating, and as much as I enjoy seeing NDASA grow, and as I said before, I've got a strong inclination to see it grow as a global brand. As much as I enjoy that, and there's a true drive and passion behind that, I take just as much out of it as well, and I really enjoy what I take out of it. So it's a mutually beneficial way forward for me. Absolutely. Thank you.
It's been great. Glenn, we're at the end of our interview, and I just needed to ask if there's anything else that you would like to express or say to the membership in consideration of your nomination and to be able to vote for you. If there's anything else that you'd like to let us know.
Yeah, thanks. So I guess I just reiterate that different lens from my perspective, and as you say, the only nominee I guess from another country, coming from a different angle. But I think that gives NDASA membership, the NDASA Association, such a huge, strong opportunity. It's already a global brand. It's already a global association. It will always have its core heart and roots and drive from the US-based side of it, as it should. But having the ability to share ideas, share experiences, share the brand and the drive and the growth from a global perspective, I think gives it that unique ability. And I guess that's where my drive is. So I'd appreciate if anybody within the membership understands and sees that drive and sees the importance of being part of a global brand, a vote for me would be much appreciated.
I see. I like that. I want to be able to ask those of our listeners and people that are members of NDASA. I think that it's very important that they reach out to you, Glenn, to be able to talk to you about some of the things that they're experiencing, things that you're experiencing, and to be able to see if there's things that we can collaborate with and how we can help each other. I'm looking forward to seeing you and being able to have you continue with the board is what my feeling is that I think that you bring so much to the table and you're a valued asset, and I want to see that continue. So I hope that membership sees that and that you have good luck in the nomination, and that we'll be talking it again soon. But I'd like to extend an invitation to you to be able to come back on to Clearing the Haze. I'm sure that there's going to be some other issues and topics that might be of interest to you. And I just want to let you know that you're always welcome, and would love to have you back.
Oh, mate, I appreciate that. And I'd more than welcome any opportunity to speak at any stage. I really do.
Awesome. Well, thank you, sir, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Right. Thanks very much.
Take care.